So we now finally have confirmation that Dune Prophecy is going to be an adaptation of the Sisterhood of Dune novel. But it's not going to rely so much on it. It's basically just the past storyline that's taken the most from what Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson wrote with the Sisterhood of Dune novel. And it's also going to chart something new, too, with the present, and the visions of the future seem to be what will tie to Frank Herbert's stories. At least to a degree, because obviously the Bene Gesserit wouldn't have planned for Paul Atreides. So at least to a point, they're going to see into the future to guide their choices moving forward. So they're not going to get the whole story. And we've seen the whole story when it comes to Dune. I think that's interesting how they're going to handle this, but I do think it sounds very complex. This is no easy task. It sounds like they're trying to appease all parts of the fandom to a degree by connecting to Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson's prequel novels, having something new and fresh for themselves that they're doing with the present storyline, and also to allude to Frank Herbert's overall universe and plans moving forward when it comes to the foundational stories of Dune. So I wonder how the Dune fandom as a whole will react to that. That's definitely a heavy task if you're going to try to please everyone. I thought they were going to use the Sisterhood of Dune as inspiration, yes. And obviously they took the characters that we know, Valia and Tula Harkonnen, as the main focus. But there were a lot of new characters. So it was kind of difficult to see, like, they were going to reframe it. They were inspired by all these works, but tell a new and original story. That's kind of the impression that I was getting. But now it seems that it's going to be taking from all these things and probably trying their best to incorporate Frank Herbert's themes and stories later to guide the Bene Gesserit's actions in the present, but also connect to the past when it comes to Valia and Tula Harkonnen and their whole arc, taking that inspiration for the past. It's definitely a complicated endeavor, is what it sounds like. And when it comes to the Dune fandom in general, they're not really fond of the prequel novels, but I am interested in seeing other creatives take their shot of a new Dune story. It's just been pretty much exclusively expanded upon by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. When it comes to the expanded works, it's just been them to shepherd the continuation of the franchise and expansion of it. So that's why it's interesting to see other things like games coming out and their interpretations of Frank Herbert's universe and stories. I find it interesting that we get to see something kind of new, to see another creator's approach to Frank Herbert's universe. I'm not really fond of how Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson have shepherded the lore or tried to incorporate or expand upon Frank Herbert's lore. So I'm curious to see how they're going to handle things like the aftermath of the Machine Crusade, because I do disagree with their approach to the Butlerian Jihad, that it wasn't this all-out war with man and intelligent machines like Terminator-esque. It was really just humans against humans with advanced technology. The foundation of this whole series is based on lore that I'm not really comfortable with how they interpreted when it comes to the Machine Crusade. So we're in the wake of that and those events, but I am curious to see how they're going to approach any sort of technology, because that was the big storyline in those Schools of Dune novels, was there was still technology being used in secret. Whether or not that's going to factor in heavily to this show, I'm not sure, but there were a lot of deviations from canon by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. But I think a lot of people agree that they really want to see other people take their shot at new Dune stories, because you never really see that with other IPs like this. Like, take Star Wars, for example. There's tons of authors that have contributed to the expansion of the Star Wars universe as a whole. And I think people like certain authors' work more than others. And it would be cool to see other novelists and other creatives also contribute to this. So hopefully this is well done. It seems like a very complicated show when it comes to juggling the multiple timelines. It sounds like a very delicate thing. If you know what you're doing and you have competent writers who know how to handle this kind of production, we're just going to have to see. But that's definitely something I wasn't expecting with the multiple timelines. The visions of the future, yeah, I can see that. So we're going to flash back to the Harkonnen sisters' past as it relates to the present. Hopefully it will connect very well with that. And seeing some glimpses of the future as they try to manipulate the present. I don't think it's what a lot of fans were hoping to hear, because I think a lot of fans were wanting to hear from other elements of the Duneverse. And when you already had Denis Villeneuve's 2-film adaptation be very Bene Gesserit focused, people really wanted or were really hungering to see the entirety of Frank Herbert's universe laid out and established. So with the other schools, the Schools of Dune trilogy incorporates the Spacing Guild and the Mentats. So are we going to see those elements? The article mentioned Desmond Hart. I know he has something to do with the Emperor, and he's suspicious of the Bene Gesserit, I believe is the only information we've gotten. So we'll see how that works out. But I think people were excited about his casting in particular. They like his work. He definitely seems like a very Duncan Idaho, especially the name too, kind of sounds similar. But he's not the sword master. I guess there is an actual Atreides sword master. I am very curious to see how they're going to handle it, especially when you consider other prequel shows, high-profile prequel shows like House of the Dragon, and now what we're seeing with Rings of Power. How is this show going to handle its dense source material and possibly try to attempt to connect all the different portions of the fandom together or appeal to them? We'll see. The aesthetic seems very muted, and again, they're trying to be in keeping with Denis Villeneuve's very minimalistic style. I don't necessarily think that was the best approach. I think it would have been cool to kind of separate the eras of time. And we are in the aftermath of war. But even then, okay, if we're in the aftermath of war, I don't even get that impression as well. It seems like it could take place right before the story of Dune. It's very similar. They have the exact same outfits, the Reverend Mothers do. And here we have Emperor Carino with a uniform that's very much like what Duke Leto Atreides wore. And I'd like to get y'all's thoughts on this as well, because I wonder if there's a growing apathy towards female-oriented and witch-based shows. Very recently, we've had Star Wars The Acolyte with their Order of Witches. Ahsoka had witches in it as well that were pretty much a direct ripoff of the Bene Gesserit. And they had like very similar lines, like seeing the future and keeping humanity's destiny in accord with what they wanted. And now we have Agatha All Along that just came out for the MCU. I think Agatha is doing okay, but I think it's just another thing where now we have another kind of matriarchal witch show. And I wonder, are audiences potentially getting tired of that? And maybe that's just me, and maybe it's just what I've been seeing. But I wonder if it's almost like the multiverse thing. We're having so many multiverse films and shows that now when I hear the term multiverse, I kind of like, oh, another one? I'm kind of tired of that. Can we do something different? I hope that it's good, but I hope that the bad impression from other shows is it turning people off before they even watch it. So I think positive word of mouth would definitely help. So yeah, the show's going to premiere in November, so hopefully we'll hear more leading up to it.